Good afternoon, everyone. We're just past the noon hour, and we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I want to welcome everyone here. My name is Chad Dowding. I'm the program manager for the Cook Leadership Academy. I have the great opportunity to work with 40 of some of the best students we have here on campus. Before I get any further, I just want to make some acknowledgments. I'd like to first welcome a few special guests we have here, Noreen Myers and Megan Saul, both former and current board members of the Board of Trustees here at Grand Valley, and Thomas Haas, the president of Grand Valley State University. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. So the Wheelhouse Talk series is an interesting one. It stems out of the Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies, dedicated to the life of Ralph Hauenstein. We have a mission and a guiding principle from Ralph's life to create ethical and effective leaders for the 21st century. Within that, our main program is the Cook Leadership Academy program, where we bring in a total of 40 fellows, soon to be more than that, from the Grand Valley State University environment. These are emerging leaders in our community and our campus, and what we do is we provide a series of programs that help to push them to the next level, to prepare them for their futures. One of the key ways we do that is through our Wheelhouse Talk series, and through that we bring in a series of local leaders, folks who are already making a difference in our community, and who can demonstrate the types of leadership that we'd like to see in our emerging leaders, the students that we have in the CLA. We pull from a whole series of different sectors, including nonprofit sector, public sector, government, business, and try and provide students with as much of a broad overview as possible. Now, as one disclaimer for today's speaker, little did we know that at the time that we invited Rosalynn to speak with us, that she would be running for the mayoral seat here at in Grand Rapids. But as second ward commissioner for Grand Rapids, we're also very excited to have her speak about her leadership today. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dana Eardley, one of our student fellows, and she'll be giving Rosalynn Bliss's introduction.
Thank you, Chad. I'm honored today to introduce to you Rosalynn Bliss. Serving her third term as Grand Rapids 2nd Ward City Commissioner, Ms. Bliss has proven to be a leader in our community as well as an advocate for the defenseless. She has been active in the child welfare system in Kent County and at the state level to advocate for the most vulnerable populations. Additionally, she serves as the Director of Residential Services at DA Blodgett, and she's been a mentor with us in the Cook Leadership Academy for 5 years now. So today, Ms. Bliss will be shedding light on some of the insights she has gained through her diverse leadership experiences. So let's all give a warm welcome to Rosalynn Bliss. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that nice introduction. Thanks. And what an honor it is to be here today. I'm really deeply honored to be a part of this year's Wheelhouse Talks. I've been to these in the past, and I've always appreciated them. And I think this is an incredible program, not just for Grand Valley, but also for our community. And as I thought about what I wanted to talk about today, I thought about talks that I've attended in the past, and I thought about what did I find most valuable during those talks and what touched me. And as I thought about that, I recognized how much I appreciated hearing the personal stories of the speakers that were a part of the series. And maybe that's because perhaps I believe that leadership is so intricately tied to the individual and the individual's character. So today I'm going to share with you, a bit about myself. I'm going to share with you a bit about my own journey and some of the valuable lessons that I've learned along the way. Lessons from individuals, from books, from essays, words of wisdom that over the years I have tucked away and kept. And I'm going to try to focus particularly on those that have a significant or have had a significant impact on me, and which I believe have contributed to helping me be the person I am today and has led me to my own unique leadership style. And I know this is a diverse audience, but as I thought about what I wanted to say today, I really thought about it with the fellows in mind. And so I particularly was thinking about some of the fellows that I've had the honor to work with over the years. One of them is here today, one of my fellows from this year. And so a lot of my remarks are going to be geared towards them. So first, I got to make sure I'm using my little PowerPoint. John, Where's John? There you are. All right. If anything messes up, I just need to know where you are. So first, a little bit about me and my own path. So I grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, very cold place. If you haven't been there, there's way more snow than this. And so we should be grateful that we don't have 10-foot snowbanks. But I grew up in the Sioux, and I grew up in a very large family. And so I have 6 brothers and 3 sisters, and I'm kind of smack in the middle. And there were 10 of us in 10 years. In fact, a couple of my brothers, they're the same age for a couple of weeks, which is a little crazy. But it was a really great family to grow up in. And we were very close. We spent, as you can imagine, many of our days together. So when I grew up, we didn't have the Wii or Xbox, and so we spent a lot of our time outside together. And my brothers and sisters, they have always been my protectors, my supporters. They have always believed in me just as much as I have believed in them. And they've had a huge impact on my life and who I am. And I attribute so much of who I am today to growing up in a large, close-knit family. So I learned the importance of sharing, of helping others, of valuing different perspectives and opinions. I learned empathy. It's really hard to see people you love hurt and go through hard things, and so I think that helps build empathy. I learned the value of relationships. I learned how to communicate. I learned how to resolve conflict. So you can only imagine, with all of us kids, especially 6 boys, how much conflict there was. So I did learn how to resolve that to the best of my ability. And I also learned from my family so this is a picture of my family, by the way. My brothers and sisters. I have tons of nieces and nephews now. So this past weekend, I was with my little niece, Addison, who's 4 months old, and then my nephew, who's 2. But I've learned so much from my family, and I learned a lot also from my parents. So I learned the value of hard work from my family, and I believe the value of independence. Growing up, my parents they weren't home much. They both worked pretty much all the time to make ends meet. My dad is a brick mason still to this day. He lays brick in the summer. And my mom worked odd jobs, but mostly at grocery stores, being a teller. So we grew up pretty poor. I can remember many times not having a lot of food to eat, or the heat was turned off, or our car would break down, and the list goes on and on. And my siblings and I, we all started working at a young age. So even when we were teenagers, we were picking strawberries down the street. I worked all the way through college, waitressing, and again, just really valuing hard work and recognizing that if you want to move forward, you have to work hard. And what I also realized at a young age is that if I wanted life to be different for me than it was for my parents, I really needed to get a good college education. And so when I graduated from high school in the Sioux, I packed up my little Ford Festiva, and I wish I could have found a picture of it because it was so little. And I didn't have power steering, which is crazy, and it was stick shift. But I packed up my little white Ford Festiva, and I drove down to Mobile, Alabama. So I went to the University of South Alabama, I know, crazy, and I lived down in Mobile for 4 years. That's where I did my undergraduate work. And so many people ask me, why did you go to Alabama from the Sioux? And it's really not all that complicated of an answer. So one, I wanted to get away from the snow. The snow was a hassle for me growing up, and I really wanted to get away from it. So that was one reason. Also, I knew I was paying for college on my own, and college in Alabama is a lot less expensive, or at least it was 20-some years ago. And my first year of college, South Alabama gave me a scholarship, so that was the writing on the wall for me. So I just figured, meant to be, that's where I'm supposed to go. So I spent 4 years in Alabama, and then I moved to Grand Rapids and made Grand Rapids my home and started looking around at graduate schools. And initially I thought I was going to go into a graduate program at Michigan State called Ecological Community Psychology, but ended up going into social work. And so then I commuted back and forth from Grand Rapids for a couple of years as I got my master's degree in social work. And then after getting my master's degree, I started working in my profession, and I started my career in the field of domestic violence. And while I was working in the field of domestic violence, I often would spend my days with the kids in the shelter. I would be drawn to helping the kids. And so my second year of graduate school, I started working in child protection, and I never really looked back. So child welfare became became really where I knew I was meant to be. So then through my work in child welfare, what I found is that I ended up working on a lot of community issues around violence against women and violence against children. So I started advocating on issues or against systems, I should say, that I thought were unfair. So I did work advocating on raising awareness around child sexual abuse, around human trafficking, around the impact of domestic violence on children. I started chairing a community group called the Domestic Violence Community Coordinated Response Team, and it was through that work, working with really a multidisciplinary team of people, I was able to work towards trying to make changes in our community and trying to make the system more responsive to the needs of victims. And I would have to say that it was the community work that I got engaged with that actually and ultimately led me to down the path to politics. It was through my work in the community on a number of initiatives that I got to know a group of pretty amazing women. And a group of them came and talked to me about running for office. And I think one of the reasons they did that is because they knew I really wanted to see change in our community, and recognizing that as an elected official, you have this really unique opportunity to positively impact the lives of a lot of people in your community. And so it was truly with their encouragement and their support that I decided to take the risk and run for city commission. And so I did that back in 2005. And I'm really unbelievably grateful that I did. So that was a little bit about my winding road. And going back to what I was wanting to share with you all today as I prepared this talk, I started to just ask myself, what do I say to a group of fellows? All incredibly talented students. What words of wisdom do I share? What advice do I wish that someone would have said to me when I was in your shoes? And those thoughts really led me to think back to my life when I was in college. And, you have this whole world ahead of you. And to be honest, I had no idea what the future held. And this straight path that I thought I was on ended up not being what happened at all. So it turned out to be this pretty winding road. So there are countless lessons that you will learn, that all of you already have learned. But I want to share with you a few that I have found to be most helpful to me. Ones that have given me strength during really challenging times, that have picked me up when I have fallen, given me strength to do things that were frightening or scary, and have really kept me true to myself. So the very first one I want to share with you today is this. So this is my personal mantra. I don't know if you all have one, but this is mine. So this is a quote that I often say to myself. I say it out loud. I say it to myself in my head at times. I scribble it on notepads during meetings. And that is, if there is a will, there's a way. Now, these may seem like 9 silly little words, but I share this with you because I believe that words are very, very powerful. Words can tear somebody down, or they can build somebody up. They can give somebody strength, or they can push one to give up. And they can shape one's outlook on life, and they can shape one's outlook on problems. They're just so powerful. And this mantra that I hold onto pretty much every day was this precious gift that was given to me. And it was given to me by my 6th grade teacher. So when I was a child, I don't know how many people know this, but when I was a child, when I was 8 months old, I was diagnosed with a pretty rare bone disease. And the disease affected my legs and prevented me from walking. And so when I was little, they put me in braces. And this was in the 70s. And so I was in braces until I was about 3 years old. And the braces didn't work. So I started to have surgeries to try to enable me to walk. And so I've had dozens of surgeries, bone grafts over the years, particularly most of them when I was a child, with my last one, hopefully my last one, when I was 26. And so this resulted in a lot of my childhood, I was in a wheelchair or on crutches or in using a walker in order to walk. And I recall one day I was in 6th grade, and my 6th grade teacher, so I was in class, and I couldn't go outside to play for recess because I was in a wheelchair, and you can just imagine how hard it is to get around in the snow. And I was sitting in class, and I was absolutely feeling sorry for myself. So I was down and out and bummed, and my teacher came in, and she sat with me, and she was talking to me, and I was, just telling her how unfair life was. And she said to me, this is just this moment in time. It's a moment in a much bigger life. And she said to me, she's like, you'll get through this. You'll be walking, and it'll be tough, but you can do it. You've done it before. And she said to me, I know this about you because I believe you have this tremendous will. And she said to me, if there's a will, there's a way. And you, Rosalynn, you have a will. And so the day after that conversation with her, I went into my 6th grade classroom, and there above the chalkboard in those, green letters that have you know what I mean, those letters that teachers use. So above the chalkboard in my class was this quote, if there is a will, there is a way. And that quote remained on the chalkboard, it was actually above the chalkboard, for the entire rest of my 6th grade year of elementary school. And so every day I read that, and it was this silent reminder of the power of words and the power of one's will. And as I said, I've said this phrase so many times, I think it's even unconscious at times. I just find myself saying it. I've whispered it. I've heard it in my head. I've said it to my staff. And in thinking back on that experience, I am absolutely sure that my teacher at that time had no idea the impact that she would have on my life. She has probably no idea. And that, to me, is a really valuable lesson, too, because it's a reminder that every single day we have this opportunity to have a positive impact on somebody's life. And sometimes when we do, we will never even know it. So I guess there's 2 lessons in that. So secondly, my clicker. Secondly, I encourage all of you to hang on to the image of success. So what I mean by this is that far too often we end up focusing on our weaknesses, where we're not strong. We focus on our own failures. And, the truth is that our life, it's inevitable that we're going to fail. There's going to be failure. We've all failed at something. There are going to be times that we fail more than once. There are going to be some things that we will never be able to do. But we shouldn't be afraid of trying. And we shouldn't be afraid of failure. When we really focus on failure, the unfortunate thing I see happen is that it prevents people from taking risks. And we lose out on opportunities because of that fear. And so my hope for all of you is that you don't let your fear of failure cripple you. That you don't let your past failures creep in and chip away at your sense of confidence. Failure is the price we pay for trying anything new, for being courageous, for putting ourselves out there, for stepping outside of our comfort zone. We are inevitably going to fail, and that is completely okay. The first time you do a speech, you may not do so well. The first time you run for office, you may lose, and that's okay. But if you try, you will eventually have success. And I think it's, when I think of challenges I've had, and I think of my work, I see my boss here at Dave Lodge at St. John's. I think of the work that we've done there and the challenges we've had. And what I found too is that when you think about challenges and you think about the potential impact they have on the children you serve or an issue that you care about, it gives you this deeper sense of commitment and a deeper sense of persistence. And so then when you are successful, which you will be if you don't give up, I encourage you to hold on to that memory and that image of success. And you think about that the next time you are facing a challenge or something is frightening to you. The brightest light, the brightest talent can be dimmed when our confidence is lost, when we begin to doubt ourselves. And I believe that anxiety and fear and stress it really can be diminished if we really focus on what we have done well and our successes in the past. I know it's been true for me so many times. I remember distinctly, I'll tell you a story. I remember the first time I ran for office, so that was 10 years ago. I was 29 years old. I had never run for office before. And quite honestly, when I first ran, I was pretty surprised at the harsh reality of politics. I don't think I was quite prepared for some of the experiences that I had. But a few weeks, I know, I was a little naive. So a few weeks before the election, though, I remember it was before the general election, and there was a debate that was organized. And I can tell you I was terrified. I had never been on a debate team, never participated in a debate. My opponent had run for office before. I could have made this incredibly long list of reasons why I was going to be a complete flop during this debate. And instead, what I did, I remember the morning of the debate, I got up, I went to yoga. At the time, that was probably my saving grace, as I was pretty active at a local yoga studio. But I took a walk. I remember I took a walk at Riverside Park, and then I went home and I journaled. And my journal entry for that day was a whole list of challenges that I had overcome. People I had helped, presentations I had given, lectures I had facilitated, all of them successfully. So again, I say, don't be afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of failing. Learn from your failures, but really hold on to those images of success. And on a side note, journaling. So I've been journaling since I was a little kid. It was kind of my way to get through things when I was a kid. So probably since I was 11 or 12, I've been journaling. And honestly, it's probably one of the best habits I developed. I have, when I look at my journals, I've filled the pages with, times that I had to pause and reflect and learn and grow and vent privately. It's all in my journals. So now my only task is to find somebody I trust to burn them when something happens to me, because I don't want those getting out. So next, I want to encourage you to pursue what brings you joy. This may be a hard lesson. It may sound like it's simple, but I believe if you pursue what truly brings you joy, you will feel so rewarded. Some people say that we should be fixated on finding happiness, and I believe that. I mean, happiness is important. But some people define happiness as a reliable car or a great home, a great job. The thing about happiness is that those things can be taken away in an instant. I think joy is different. I think it comes largely from pursuing your passions, largely from pursuing your interests. And to me, it translates into one thing. It's do what you love. So do what you love. I say this to my students all the time. I have this great honor of teaching at Grand Valley, and I say this to my graduate social work students all the time. Don't take the first job that comes to you. Take the first job that you feel is the right fit for you. So find something that you do. Do what you love. Find your passion. Find your niche. Find the things that fill you up. And whatever it may be, find what's in your heart, and I encourage you to follow it. You may not know what it is today, and it may change as you change and you grow, because that's what all of us will do. But it should always be a priority. I remember when I first went off to college, I had this really crazy notion that I was going to be an engineer. So when I was in high school, I took a CAD class. I thought I was brilliant. I really wasn't, because I spent one semester trying to take engineering classes in college and decided it was not for me. So then I switched to political science, and a year later I switched my major to psychology, and then I decided, I think I'll double major in psychology and criminal justice, and thought I wanted to be a probation officer, and then thought, maybe I was meant to be a teacher. So I had all these ideas when I was in college. And even for grad school, I thought I was going to get a doctorate degree in psychology. And, when I learned more about social work and I talked to professors and I talked to other social workers, it was pretty immediate, I would say. I knew I was meant to be a social worker. I knew that it was aligned with who I was. So, take your time. You don't have to know right away, but really be committed to finding work that brings you joy. I'm so glad I do that. The work I do at Dave Lodge at St. John's, it is so rewarding. Even on the really tough days, the emotional days, I find such joy in the work that we do. On the City Commission, I love what I do. It's unbelievably rewarding to see the impact of your work, both on the commission, but then also in the community. So I encourage you to look closely within yourself, listen to your gut, try new things, find what brings you joy, and then once you do, be an expert, and then help others find their joy. So next, I urge you to not to fear transformation. So I have this essay, and I can't even remember who gave it to me, but I wish I could. But I have this essay that I pull out from time to time, and I share it with people, with my staff, and I share it with students. And it describes life as this series of trapeze swings, that we are either hanging on to a trapeze bar, swinging along for a few moments in life, or we are hurtling across space in between trapeze bars. And the trapeze bar that is coming towards us, it's our next step, it's our future, and it's our time to grow. But in order to grow, we have to release our grip on the present, on this well-known bar that we've been holding on to for a long time, and move to the new one. And we must totally release our grasp on the old bar, and for a moment in time, we hurtle across space before grabbing onto the new bar. And each time that we do it, it may be scary. It doesn't matter if we've, done it each time in the past successfully. It may still be frightening. We may be afraid we're going to miss that bar, we're going to fall. There's no guarantees. Maybe you don't think there's a net under you, no insurance policy. But we do it anyway because hanging on to that old bar is no longer an option. So for what might seem like an eternity, we soar through the air towards a new bar. So our past is gone, the future is not yet here. This is what's called a period of transformation. And this is when change and growth can occur. These voids in between, these transition periods of our life, they're scary, confusing, exciting. They have this mix of emotion, but they're actually really incredibly rich places to be. Places that, if you allow them, can be expansive and can be filled with growth. I kind of feel like I just stepped into one, or I should say I just let go of a bar and when I announced a couple weeks ago that I'm running for mayor. And I'm not really sure how long I'm going to be in that period. But what I do know is that whatever the outcome, I will be a stronger and better person for having let go and being willing to let go. So last, I want to share with you some of my observations about what I believe are important qualities that great leaders possess. I've been really blessed throughout really my entire life to have incredible people that have supported me, and also to have worked with, learned from, developed relationships with great leaders. I mean, one of them is here. So Sharon Lockridge is my boss at Dave Lodge at St. John's. She's the president there, and I've learned so much from her and so many other people that I've worked with over the years. But what I've come to believe is that there are a number of core qualities that great leaders possess. And it's not that each of them possess all of these qualities all of the time. But I do believe that there's common qualities that I see in leaders and great leaders that I really admire and I aspire to develop in myself. So the first one. So one thing that's really obvious is that great leaders, they love what they do and it shows. And this kind of ties back to my encouragement to all of you to find what you love and do it. Because it will show. It will show in what you do. Every single one of us can think of someone that we know, and you can tell almost instantly if they love what they do or if they're miserable. And that, it just permeates in everything they do. And great leaders truly, genuinely love what they do. They also do the right thing. And they do the right thing even when it's really hard or unpopular. And I have seen this so many times in my work. And it's hard. It's hard. It's especially hard when you're making a decision that you know somebody that you care about is going to be really upset about. That's a core quality of a great leader, is that they have to be able to make those hard decisions. I've also noticed that they're patient, and they have this sense of self-control, and they have this calmness, especially during times of crisis, and they're able to help other people feel calm and recognize that we're going to get through this. I found that they are kind, that they give appreciation, they give it openly and honestly, they're attentive, and they're very encouraging. I've also appreciated that a lot of the people I've worked with, they recognize and appreciate failure, and they see it as an opportunity for growth. And they're humble. I'm going to switch on here. They listen to others. They're open to hearing contrary opinions. They respect the opinions of others. And they recognize that when you listen to diverse opinions, you make better decisions. And so they don't insulate themselves with people who only think the way that they think. They're open to honest and candid feedback, and they're committed to personal and professional growth. And I know this can be so hard sometimes, because it's really easy, it's human nature to get defensive and to not want to hear critical feedback. But if we're really committed to growing, you have to be open to hearing the hard stuff. And you have to be open and willing to take a look at it and try to do better. They're also genuine. They have this genuine will to serve and to make a difference, and they're willing to sacrifice. And that sometimes is a hard thing to do. They take care of themselves, and they recognize the importance of self-care. I always say to my staff at Dave Lodge at St. John's, I always say, you have got to take care of yourself. If you are not in a good place emotionally, you will never be able to help somebody else. So it's really important that we recognize that if we're not in a good place, it's really hard to make a positive impact. They also are able to say no, and they are able to do it in this really sensitive, respectful way that doesn't make people mad. So, this is something that a lot of these lessons I'm still working on every day, but I have to say this is the hardest one for me, because there's so many things that you care about. It's really easy to say yes. It's easy to want to be involved in everything. And I think recognizing your own limitations is very important. So you have to be willing to say no. You have to be willing to say, my plate is too full, and I want to do these 10 things really, really well instead of these 20 things, with mediocrity. So that's something that I continue to try to learn. But it's an important lesson to learn. And I know Judge Smolinski was here last month, and she and I have talked a lot about this, the ability to say no, and that's a tough one. They're also honest and trustworthy, and they really value relationships, and they value the importance of relationships, and they put time into relationships. And I've noticed that a lot of great leaders, they recognize that there's really nothing that we can do without other people. So you can't really accomplish big, significant change, particularly I think of systemic change, without working with other people. That it really takes people coming together to create change. And then last, they're able to work towards a common goal, and they're able to put their own self-interest aside and make a decision based on what's in the best interest of the greater good or the community. And this is probably something I've been probably one of the first and most powerful things I was able to see in our current mayor, George Hartwell. He is so committed to making decisions based on what he believes is in the best interest of our city and community. And I've never, ever once questioned his integrity or his intent. And that is an amazing quality to have. So these are some of the lessons I've learned, valuable observations, experiences that I've had that have shaped my character, my perspective, my life. And they've really helped shape the leader that I am, but the leader that I am trying to be, that every day I try to be. And each one of you have your own stories, and you will have your own teachers, and you will have your own experiences. I hope you have your own mantra that will guide you and support you, and will give you strength when you need it. And you will each develop your own unique leadership skills and your leadership style. And my hope is that someday I'll be sitting out there in a chair and I'll be listening to you. I'll listen to you tell me about your journey and about your lessons and about your own unique leadership style. So that is my hope for all of you. Thank you again for letting me join you today and be a part of this really great talk. So thanks.
Thank you very much. We have plenty of time for questions. If you wouldn't mind waiting for the microphone so that we can all hear your questions, that would be great.
One of the concerns that I have, and I think many people have, is the role that money plays in politics. We see it on the national level, on the state level, and hopefully we don't see it at the local level, but you don't know. How are you going to handle something when maybe a businessman or a business person or corporation gives you a ton of money for your campaign? Yeah. 2 years later, they want something. How are you going to handle something like that?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try not to focus too much on my campaign. I'll try to stick with the role of leadership. But I will say, when it comes to politics, I'll talk about in the past. You know, absolutely, to win elections, it takes money. I mean, you have to be able to get your message out, connect with people. A lot of that is done through mailing, so it does. I mean, campaigns are expensive. We all know that. Obviously, less at a local level. Fortunately, there's limits in place. So, you know, at a city commission level, the maximum amount anyone can give is $1,000, and at the mayoral level, it's $2,000. So there's caps on the amount of money. But you know, in my past, I have made tough decisions that people who have given me donations didn't agree with. And I think a lot of elected officials, particularly at the local level, you know, they're pretty honest about that. And they say, I really love your support, and I hope you're supporting me because you believe in me and you trust that I'm going to make the decision that I think is right for our city. Doesn't mean we're going to agree all the time. But one thing I always promise people, regardless of if they give me money or not, is that I'll listen to you. I'll hear your perspective. I'll take it into consideration when I make a decision. But I'm going to make decisions that you don't agree with. And so far, you know, people have respected that. I do think that there's a level of understanding for people who give to political campaigns. It's my assumption they recognize that that doesn't buy you a vote. I've never felt that, and I've not seen it really at the city level. I can't speak for other levels, but at least in my experience.
I noticed that you had some images of historical leaders, Martin Luther King Jr., et cetera, on some of your slides. And you had noted your sixth grade teacher and then your current boss at D.A. Blodgett. Were there any other historical figures that you really drew a lot of inspiration from or inspired you?
Yeah. So I read a lot. So Abraham Lincoln obviously is a favorite, FDR. Alice Paul was the image of the woman. You know, so I have great respect for the women who came before us and actually helped make it in our country, allow us as women the right to vote. You know, I think there's, and then obviously, you know, Sharon is here today. She is one of my mentors. Mayor Hartwell, Mary Alice Williams, she has been, particularly since I've been a city commissioner. She is a former city commissioner. She served on the city commission. She actually won in a write-in campaign, which is absolutely amazing. She has a great story. She has been probably one of my strongest supporters and confidants. She's typically the first person I call when I'm struggling with something, and that was particularly true when I was early in my career on the city commission, when I had a lot to learn and felt pretty overwhelmed at times.
So there's kind of a lot of talk about you know, what makes a successful politician and stuff like that, and that is kind of changing with different dynamics of leadership and stuff. I'm curious, with a kind of a social work and kind of community based perspective, do you think you're still able to successfully? Well, all right. Well, you were. I'm like, how did you manage the commission when it can be sometimes more economically focused, and other things that might not be quite up your alley?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I was actually asked that a lot when I first ran. Like, how is a social worker going to handle a budget? Fortunately, I can. So my experience in the nonprofit world, I actually think has helped me immensely on the city commission. So in the nonprofit world, you have tight budgets. You have to figure out a way to stretch resources. You have to be creative. You have to appreciate your staff because they're doing really hard work for not nearly enough money. I mean, that's true across all types of social work fields. So I do think my work in the nonprofit world really helped me on the city commission. And then fortunately, I am a quick study. So even though the city commission, our budget is over $300 million if you take in the general operating fund and the enterprise funds, it's, if you commit the time to going through it and understanding it, it's manageable. And then, I recognize that, I can't help anybody without a balanced budget. Even in my work at DA Blodgett St. John's, if I can't balance my budget, I'm not going to be able to help kids. So that ability to balance a budget is absolutely critical, and that's true for the city too. I mean, when I first got into office, we were entering a horrible economic downturn. I got in, and within 3 years, we cut hundreds of staff. We slashed departments. The parks department was slashed in half. We had swimming pools that were closing. And so it was, yes, we have to balance a budget because under the law, you have to, as a city, as a municipality, you have to balance your budget. You can't go into debt like the federal government. But then once we were able to balance the budget, then I focused on, okay, now how are we going to make sure that all of these really core quality services that are part of having a great city are able to be maintained? And so I was able to actually reach out through relationships and look at, okay, how do we raise money to open swimming pools? How do we organize and develop and create a Friends of Parks organization, an independent 501c3 that can raise money to support the park system, because we know we don't have the funds within City Hall to do some of the things that need to be done to make sure that kids have access to a swimming pool in the summer or to a playground that is safe. So, the budget piece is really critical, but also being able to look beyond that and not let the budget constrain you and realize, okay, I'm going to do what I can with the money I have, and I'm also going to work really hard to do these other things that I believe are needed to have a great city. So it's a good question. It's a lot to learn, though. My learning curve was huge. So.
Thank you very much for your talk. I appreciate it. And I learned a lot.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Your talk was sort of focused on you, but I wonder if you could focus for a minute on the city.
Sure.
City of Grand Rapids. And I'm sure you've thought about this, but what do you see at this moment, not as a mayor or as a city commissioner, but as a resident, a citizen of the city of Grand Rapids? What do you see as the city's greatest challenges in the future, and what are its greatest strengths that it can bring to bear in meeting those challenges?
Sure. I think it depends on the level you look at. So I think there are unique challenges that exist specific to certain neighborhoods. So I think some neighborhoods are really struggling still with blighted housing, with the lack of affordable housing, with crime, so there are some issues that are neighborhood specific. But then if you look at the city as a whole, I think we've done some really good work to get us to where we are today. And when you look at the progress we've made on environmental issues and even getting our fiscal house in order, we have a very sound financial basis now. We're on good, solid ground. We have money for streets, we have money for our parks, thanks to the voters. So we are making progress. But then when you look at the city as a whole, I think a significant challenge we have are issues around race and diversity. And in fact, on Monday, Dr. Powell was here at the Econ Club, and he specifically talked about that. He talked about the data in Grand Rapids and how even though Grand Rapids is moving forward, we're leaving a lot of people, a lot of families behind, that we're not all doing better. Some of us are, absolutely. Some areas of the city are, but there are others that aren't. And so to me, a significant challenge is going to be, okay, how do we bring everybody up? How do we identify that? How do we truly address and have a conversation about the racial divide that exists in our community? And we have to. I mean, and that is tied to so many things. I mean, I have a holistic approach on just about everything. But when people talk about talent attraction, people talk about entrepreneurs. All of that is related to making sure that we have a diverse community that is welcoming and inclusive. So I think that's going to be a key issue that we as a community need to address. And the nice thing about strengths is we live in a city with amazing people. I mean, I think our number one strength are the people that live here. The people who are committed, they love this city, they are passionate about it, they're willing to go above and beyond, they're willing to spend their time and energy to address things to make their community a better place. So I think because of the rich history, but also the level of involvement and engagement and people in our community, I think we'll get there. We just have to elevate the conversation. The other thing I see being a core issue that will potentially change the face of our city is going to be the potential redevelopment of the river. So the river restoration, not only will it be an incredibly expensive project, but you look at other cities that have restored their river, and it's been a catalyst for economic growth. And so I think a challenge for all of us is going to be, particularly at the city, because we technically will own the maintenance of the river, we have to make sure that that's done in a thoughtful way, that we make sure it's inclusive, that there's connectivity, that the neighborhoods are involved, that we don't look at just one piece of it, but we look at it, the whole, span of the river. We have to look at the river's edges. We have to look at development on the river. So it's a very complicated project that potentially could change the face of what the downtown looks like. Yeah, in an exciting way if it's done well. But it's a very complicated. There's fish and wildlife issues. There's, environmental issues. There's a lot of things that need to be worked out that are critical.
As a woman leader, do you have any gender-specific advice for our fellows?
Yes, I do. Yes. I think one thing I've learned, it's interesting. So when I was first elected, I was not only the only female on the city commission, but I was also the youngest. So I think there was about 30 years difference between myself and my next oldest counterpart. So it's hard to know if part of my early experience was based on my age or my gender. But one thing I have learned, and I would encourage all of the women and young women who are interested in leadership, one thing I would encourage you to do is be willing to be more assertive than maybe you are naturally comfortable being. So one thing I learned is that I had to actively and intentionally be more assertive in order to be heard. So there were so many times, not so much now, but early on in my service, where I felt just completely dismissed. I felt like I wasn't even acknowledged. And so I would go into a room and I would be, around a table of 10 or 12 men. I was the only woman. And I found even to just have somebody not talk over me forced me, like I had to be much more assertive and intentional. And so just being prepared for that, being willing to do that, I think is important. Also being able to confront things that are said that are not appropriate. Having a comfort with confronting sexist things that are said in a respectful way, and you can do that. You can say to someone, that's not appropriate. And when you are ready to talk to me with a little respect, you can come knock on my door. You know, I think it's okay to confront things that that you feel are inappropriate and to do it in a respectful way. And I think we have to do that. You know, because I think, you know, you have to raise awareness. So I would say those are two things. You know, being comfortable with confrontation, but also being comfortable being a little more assertive than maybe you are used to. That's what I would encourage you to do. And have somebody that you know and trust that you can talk to and vent to. That's important too. Yeah.
We have time for about one more question, if we have one. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.